Minister, clearly the issue of migration is on the agenda for this meeting. What will be your input, because you handle issues that are related to movement of people at the borders?
Well, I think most immediately is, of course, the issue of the repatriations that we've been dealing with. You'll know that the temporary repatriation facility that we set up is at Musina, which is really on the border with Zimbabwe. So this is an issue that really relates to both countries, and that is something that we will continue to focus on to make sure we've got a lawful, dignified process that plays out in that environment. I think beyond that, the relationship between South Africa and Zimbabwe is critically important in this region on a number of levels, including migration, as you've mentioned. And one of the big initiatives that I think could be transformational in this space is the one-stop border post concept. So we know on the Beitbridge side that Zimbabwe has done work on that. South Africa has just, or is going through the legislative process on our one-stop border post bill. And we have announced the bidders that will be physically rebuilding the 6 busiest land borders, including Beitbridge. So I think we've got a very big infrastructure focus here as well, which then ultimately feeds back into security, it feeds back into efficiency, making space for better technology. Last week with the President, I launched the ETA, Electronic Travel Authorization, and the President was processing one of those first travelers in himself. And I think it really demonstrated to the country the power of this technology. But we want to roll the ETA out to all our borders, including Beitbridge and our land borders. So that requires this big focus on infrastructure and development.
When I spoke to the President of Botswana, Duma Boko, he said they are more advanced on technology and the region is looking up to Botswana. He made an example that, for example, on the Mozambique side, they are quite advanced on technology to check goods that are coming in and the movement of these trucks, but they get stuck in South Africa, where at times you have to wait for 7 days before you can be cleared. What are we doing with that congestion? Because the delay affects trade.
No, it absolutely does. I think we have to just separate customs issues from immigration issues. So some of it relates to customs, but when it comes to immigration, I can tell you South Africa is rapidly becoming a world leader in this space. It's correct that we've been behind the curve. If you look at East Africa, for example, one-stop border posts have been something that has been implemented there quite successfully. But South Africa now is actually, we are leaping ahead. So what we want to do is, with the ETA, we want to become a country that uses this online platform with machine learning, biometric technology to process not only short stay visas or tourist visas, but your whole visa suite, study visas, work visas, and really become the most advanced in the world when it comes to using technology for visa processing specifically. Where I do think it is correct to say that we need to push harder is on the physical infrastructure side. So that's why our challenge is, I mean, I was at Beitbridge recently. I think if you look at that tower, it says 1937. We can't have infrastructure from 1937 when we've got incredible systems like the ETA in place now. So the real challenge is to really merge those two, and it is correct to say that that's where a lot of the work now needs to focus. But really what I would emphasize, the foundation is so much stronger than ever before because of the technology we now have in place.
And finally, Minister, apparently there are lots of people who are supposed to be deported. When you look at countries, which countries are mostly affected? Apparently you go to the prisons waiting trial, but those who were finally told that they must be deported, and Lindela, apparently lots and lots of foreign nationals who came to South Africa without proper documents, who are waiting to be deported.
So what we've done over the last few weeks is about 85,000 repatriations and deportations. Most of them have been voluntary repatriations, but I think it gives you a sense of the volume and the scale of work that is underway in this space. And in terms of the countries that you ask about, we've seen Malawi becoming a very big country now in terms of the most people being from Malawi that we're repatriating. But generally, most of the migrants in South Africa come from our region. So it makes sense that most of those who are subject to deportation or voluntary repatriation would then also be from the region. So that's why these conversations are important. It's for us to get around the table to say, here are the challenges we're dealing with, what are some of the push and pull factors, but also to just constantly reinforce the message that if you look at the way in which government has done these repatriations, I'm very proud of the fact that we have not had a single serious incident, 85,000 people, where Home Affairs or government itself has dropped the ball. We have done this in the humane, dignified manner that is required, while at the same time upholding the rule of law and saying if you're in South Africa illegally, the Immigration Act says we have to take certain enforcement measures.
And there are reports that you want countries to pay for deportation.
Well, I think those are diplomatic engagements really through DIRCO to say how do we have a more equal sharing of the load. I think that is something that South Africa is raising. It's something we've raised in the revised white paper on citizenship, immigration and refugee protection in general. It's broader than just that issue to say, we have a challenge of irregular migration throughout the region, not only in South Africa, but we have to have then more equal sharing of the load of asylum seekers, of refugees, for example, and it can't only be just one country that has to deal with all of that. We've seen the consequences now in some of the massive numbers that we are dealing with in the repatriation. So I think it gives us an opportunity for a very deep conversation around how we resolve these issues on a sustainable basis, not only for South Africa but for the region of which we're part.
How much you have spent recently? Estimation.
I think the report that the department gave to the Portfolio Committee last week was close to 300 million rand of this process, but that encompasses the town we built outside of Musina that could house 20,000 people. We had to get water, electricity, healthcare, all of those things in place, again, because of our commitment to upholding the dignity of every person. And then, of course, you have to have the buses transporting people. We had to do all the fingerprint verifications. We had to check if people were wanted for crimes in South Africa. We couldn't let them just leave the country and not be held accountable. So that's what we're currently looking at. And of course, that's ongoing work in progress. But we're trying to do the best of our abilities to manage with these huge volumes. Unprecedented work, really.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your time.